Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear us? You can chat in the chat. Good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to send the link to the opening of the space. So if you follow the link, you should go to the space. And what we're going to do is talk a bit about the work and what these guys did during the residency. And you can follow along during our walk through the space. So I'm just going to share it here. So just to give you a bit of context, this is the work from the artists from our January residency, and you have printmaking, you have painting with plastic, you have weaving with discarded materials, and you have at the end a creative reading of a text by Charlotte Mendel. So to give you a bit of context about the space, so you have here the main, I have to move on this side, the main gallery here, and you have two different rooms that you can go by walking through the sculptures. I'm not going to walk just right now because it's easier to go in the space when you have the artists that you talk a bit about the work. And then you have at the end, I'm just going to walk here, this little door that will lead you to a maze-like space where you have different questions and you can answer yes or no and go in different directions. And at the end, you have the creative reading from Charlotte. So I'm just going to walk here. And here you have, for the ones of you who haven't yet gone into these virtual galleries, you click on the plus button and you can read the curatorial text. You can read the text by the artists, which you also have a link to their website if you want to look more into their works. And later on, you're also going to have interviews with the artists, so they will talk a bit more about their work and their experience in their residency. Now, James or Jodie, who wants to go first talking about their work?
I guess I'll go first.
So I'm just going to move here.
Since I'm right here. Hello, everybody. Let's see here. Let me get back in here. Not that I need to be moving around necessarily or anything, but here, yeah. So my name is James Keul. I am mostly a painter, although printmaking is something that I've done also for a very long time, particularly monotypes. I started doing them in 1997, and yeah, these ones are. I like, one of the things I like about the monotype is that you get this idea, the ghost print if you print multiple ones. So for those of you who don't know what a monotype or monoprint is, basically you paint on a piece of copper or plexiglass, in this case plexiglass. You paint an image that you want, and then you print it onto a piece of wetted paper. And run it through an etching press. And there's a technique called shin collé where it's basically a type of collage where you insert a type of paper between the actual paper, and the plate, so it gets trapped in between there. So on the image that was just up, there's the that, like this one here. That is an example. The middle part of that is the shin collé paper. So that's a Toyo Japanese paper that has on it printed strands of sort of woven fibers. They're actually pineapple leaves from a pineapple plant that I have growing on my windowsill. But I sort of wove them together, and they're sort of unraveling a little bit. And the idea behind this whole series here is that because I have spent a lot of time painting images of climate change that are, I wouldn't say dystopian, but they're definitely sort of like trying to be a wake-up call for why we need to act. And I think there's sort of a general movement among the sort of eco-artist sphere to have more effective messaging by not being so sort of dire and doomsday about it all, and rather finding ways to sort of come together and find some solutions, or at least ask questions that do that. And so when we started this project, and we've talked a lot about different ways that artists talk about these issues, and they range greatly. Sometimes people talk about things that are really they're direct in it. Maybe sometimes it's harder to tell maybe that's about climate change, but um, but these ones I wanted to be a little bit more vague, so there's left more open to the imagination. But what I realize is that we live in this country. I'm in the United States, and we just had an election, a presidential election, um, where we now have a president who has basically eliminated climate change from any of the governmental websites and everything, and it's really difficult to even talk about this with some people, because half the population really is worried about it and wants to do something, and then there are a lot of other people who it's somehow become a political issue and um, just don't seem to care at all. So how do you reach across those boundaries? And the more we've talked about it, and the more I've sort of thought about it, the more I realized that there are these sort of moral fibers, as the name of our exhibition um, talks about, is that sort of are being lost or fraying at the seams, because there are fewer opportunities for us to meet and interact in other areas of society in a way that you naturally would have. And so the idea of this is that this first one here is about my opa, my grandfather, um, the one with the 5 on the wall. Um, that one is about, it started because on the last one here is a guy in front of an air conditioning, and he made a comment that the end of civilization was the invention of the air conditioner, because before then people would sit on their front porches and they would socialize with each other. So this is just one example. So the others are the people on the front porch, and interwoven over, or sort of superimposed on one, we have natural fibers that I've inked and printed, and then on the other there's a sort of, I've inked synthetic like netting type material that I salvaged out of the trash to kind of, it's almost like a netting that we're sort of trapped in this sort of thing. And so the other ones are all kind of variations on the same thing. We've got like online banking, leading, or is the end result here. But it started with people going to the bank and meeting, or going to the movies versus home entertainment, or going to the market and instead of like loading up your, daily, instead of loading up your fridge at Costco for, once a month or whatever. Shopping at Amazon versus going to the store and meeting people in the process and having little interactions, taking the bus instead of driving your own car. Anyways, these are the ideas that I sort of feel like if we don't deal with these root issues with our societal connections, then it's hard to imagine how we can even really talk about the environmental ones. So I wanted to be sort of subtle about it. But anyways, some of the ones that also incidentally that are sort of superimposed, like over here, the ones like the netting in front of this this TV home entertainment system or whatever, like these are gilting, like gold, it's gold ink, and the one above it with the phone is gold ink, like gold printed fiber above. So it's sort of like a glitzy kind of it's like fool's gold almost. Anyways,
Can you talk a bit about the evolution of your work, because you kind of went in different directions since the beginning of the work till the end? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that really appealed to me about doing this residency and talking with people about it, other artists about it, and with you, Joanna, and just thinking about these things, is like there's so many ways that you can approach it, and so I just like um, I've enjoyed the process of exploring different ways. I don't know. I'm trying to even think of in the beginning days. I had some ideas, um, like for example, things like connecting the dots, like quite literally. I had one with sort of word based with like word clouds that I was thinking about doing, and yeah, just I don't know. There are lots of different ways to describe it that are non-dystopian, and I just don't want to. I feel like pivoting too far out of my realm of comfort, or not even comfort, but what I'm good at is representational painting and drawing and printmaking and stuff. So, um, although I'm interested in exploring new things and trying new mediums, I also feel like to just totally pivot into something that's completely unrelated, it doesn't, I don't know this the best use of my skills. And what I liked about this too is that I was able to sort of push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone, and with the printmaking, because there are these different elements of Shin-Kole, which is not an easy thing to get the hang of. So that was kind of fun. And actually, the ones on the 5 ones on the with the air conditioner and the porches, those ones are a little bit different in that, like the one with the netting and the air conditioner, that one is actually glued over top of the print. So it's like sort of the opposite of a Shin-Kole, which is usually like sandwiched underneath the print. This one's actually on top of it, and it's glued with an archival heat applied glue called Biva 351 or whatever, 351, I think, 371. And anyways, it's kind of fun because it's glue, it's clear, it's archival, and it allows for sort of superimposing things. So the leaves on the ones above some of them have like both the netting and there's like 3 or 4 layers of that built up. So it really is more like a collage, which was fun.
Thank you, James. Guys, you have any questions for James?
Thank you.
Guys in the group, so Charlotte, Jodie, and Bronwen, or you guys in the chat?
James, seeing your work presented in this gallery setting, do you feel differently about it than when you were working on it very intimately? It's quite an intimate process you've described. How does it feel looking at them in this gallery space?
Thanks for that, Bronwen. That's a good question. That it's something I didn't mention actually, is that these are actually quite small pieces. They could have been represented in a smaller fashion as they are, but they would have been sort of almost lost in this space in some ways. And it being an online exhibit, it is it's nice to have the option of sort of seeing it in a different way and really embracing it instead of trying to kind of mimic the way it would have looked. So that's kind of nice. So in that sense, I love it. It's really impactful. The other flip side of that is that there is a little bit of irony about this whole talk of in-person connection, and yet here we are online doing this. So none of these things are it's not black and white. It's like we don't want to go back to the days where we don't have refrigerators so that we can have more opportunities to meet in the marketplace or whatever, nor do we want to like lose the ability to online bank or whatever it is, or have a nice relaxing place to watch a movie at home in your own house or whatever. But it's worth considering these things. And Zoom or Riverside, whatever, are also good things to, connect people from all over the world to unite around a cause. So there are definitely pluses and minuses to everything. But thank you so much.
When people view your work, James, do you feel that they have a sense of agreeing with this sort of concept that we've really lost the ability to we're dissociated and disengaged from one another? Do you think that message reverberates through your art?
I hope so. I was debating even the order in which to display them, because I mean, at one time I sort of was thinking, well, maybe it'll be more like it's coming back to the community element versus fading out or something. But I sort of feel like, in a way, it's more like this is where we're at. It's like it's coming to this sort of more lonely existence, quite frankly, where we have these things that are comfortable and make us it makes our standard of living higher in some ways, and yet what we're doing is freeing up time for what? So we can sit at home and watch TV, instead of freeing up time so that we can be more connected to each other. So I don't really know. And in a way, it sort of sets you up for sort of despising the time that you are spent doing other things when you can't be at home relaxing and being entertained, instead of having that be sort of the fabric of life and just being sort of part of the rhythm of what you like and enjoy and you're used to. And so you're content and happy in your life because you're not sort of tricked into this capitalistic idea that we need all these things to be happy.
And James, I just wanted to say it's really wonderful to see your work up in this space. And I did have a sort of a wander around the space, but I tried to just kind of look at a few of everyone's bits of work, so not actually looking at everything because I wanted to wait until today. But just, I don't know, I just have this really big sort of sense that seeing your work like this, it really it does tell a story, and it kind of makes me think back to when you were speaking about, oh, you also have been working on this graphic novel project, and it quite speaks to me in that way as well. And do you think that perhaps that may have had any influence on your work, or like, do you feel like these things are feeding into one another?
Yes, I would definitely say so. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that too. It's a nice medium, I guess, to kind of explore some ideas relatively quickly, because they're done relative. You could spend a lot of time on a monotype and print it, and it can actually like squeeze out in a weird way or dry before you get a print. So it's conducive to working quickly and being spontaneous. I guess that is also something that working on this graphic novel has helped me to do, because I've been working out of my imagination for that, and so all these were done from the imagination as well. I had a few references here and there for like a kitchen or something like that, but it's all kind of done quickly, and that's all done allowable because I've spent so much time sort of I guess learning how to draw with efficiency. Yeah, it's been helpful. But anyway, we should move on to the rest of your wonderful work. But before we move on, thanks so much, Joanna, and for all of you working with you. It's been wonderful. And I can't wait to hear you all speak about your work.
Thank you, James. Jodie, do you want to go next? Yes? So I'm just going to pop here. Sorry, Jodie, just to interrupt you. Just a second. So Jodie's works are also the sculptures that you're going to walk through. For the guys you don't know, I'm just going to start here and here. Can it be here, or do you prefer the other ones, Jodie?
You feel free to start wherever you like.
I'm going to start here near the text. Again, it's the same thing. You have here the text explains Jodie's work, and then you have here a link to go to a website if you want to look more of her works. So, Jodie, I'd like to do you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jodie Posen. I'm a textile artist and first and foremost a weaver. Although for this project, I've explored various different mediums. That was kind of one of my desires for the residency, to kind of get into doing a range of different things, and also to connect with other people, kind of focusing on ecological issues. I recently, a year ago, moved to Switzerland, so I've kind of trying to find different kind of creative outlets, creative pockets, and I managed to find all of my weaving communities. I think some people have joined for the chat tonight. But also I've been trying to find sort of artistic communities, and I've been applying for lots of residencies, and really wanted to I really wanted to participate in this one, so I was really happy when I was accepted onto it. And one thing that I wanted to focus on sort of for my development was actually conceptualizing my work. Often when I'm working, I'm kind of focusing a lot on material exploration, I work a lot with recycled waste in my work, and I've done a lot of sort of textile processes for recycling waste. I work with paper and plastic, and I spin and cut and try to transform these sort of things that I would normally chuck in the bin or recycle into something that kind of looks very different to how it started off as. So I kind of, the aim is to try and create something beautiful, so something that I wouldn't want to throw away. And these things might end up looking quite strange but intriguing at the same time. So I approached this residency with a research project in mind, and I wanted to look at the way that that the land is kind of misused by landowners. Specifically in the UK, I was thinking about the practices of peatland drainage and heather moorland burnings. So the peatland drainage is something that's been practiced historically, and there are wealthy landowners who look at the land and decide that it is not, it hasn't got any monetary value as it is. They can't plant or grow things there, but they see ways to get around that. So with peatland drainage, draining the water from the peatlands allows for sort of really rich, nutritious agricultural land, but they don't think about the fact that these peatlands are very important carbon stores, and so they're covered in this wonderful moss called sphagnum moss, which covers the peatland in a really sort of dense carpet, which ends up trapping the water underneath and kind of pickling the soil and compressing it and turning it into this really rich peat, which then, when the plants absorb carbon from the atmosphere, they trap the carbon in the peat, and it can lock it away for millennia. But when the peat is disturbed, then this means that or if it's destroyed or damaged, then the carbon is released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And so in this project, I was thinking about peatland drainage and the heather burning on heather moorlands. And heather burning is a practice which is done to create, to promote the regrowth of the heather, to create an environment which is really beneficial for grouse breeding, so that during hunting season, the hunters can come along and have plenty of grouse to shoot. But this heather burning practice also is really detrimental to disturbing the peat. It dries out the land, and lots of wildlife is impacted at the same time. There's a lot of these hunters put out a lot of traps to capture the natural predators of the grouse, so they make it a really good habitat for the grouse to live. But at the same time, it's kind of like destroying all of these areas, all of these other ecosystems that are going on, and releasing lots of carbon into the atmosphere. And so through my project, I thought about the sort of visuals I was thinking I did a lot of drawing at the beginning of the practice, and I was drawing sort of the stalks from the heather burnt in previous years. I think we're standing near one of the drawings there. So yeah, this one here, I was thinking about the stalks, which to me really looked like kind of bare bones reaching out from the earth, and it was kind of like really quite a dystopian look. And also on the left hand side, I didn't want to just kind of focus on all of the really sort of sad aspects. So I was thinking about the sphagnum moss that I was talking about. So I wanted to draw the sphagnum moss, which looks really quite amazing if you see it close up. It's sort of like a very quite alien looking carpet of different forms and different plants that are really surreal. And yeah, and also
Jodie,
I began drawing the grouse. So yeah,
sorry, not wanting to
Sorry.
interrupt you. Lee is asking, what is the totem made of? Totem made of?
Oh, so that is. So my sculpture, I guess, Joanna, do you want to walk back into the portal again? Yeah, so this is a textile sculpture, which it's not woven, but I was kind of hand embroidering this sheet of it's old plastic vegetable sack, basically, yeah, from the greengrocers, and it's this kind of wonderful fabric. It's like a very juicy bright orange color, which kind of, it was very kind of yeah, it felt to me very much like the orange of the fire, like the gas canister for the burnings. So I thought it was quite yeah, quite poetic to use it. But I embroidered it by hand, so I was kind of like weaving in all of these different pieces of hoarded waste that I'd used, and that was a combination of paper, the foil from my coffee, plastics, old sort of, yeah, different like the bags that you get around oranges and lemons, those sorts of things, and then the bits of yarn that I've cut off my loom from previous projects. So all of these things, and I wanted to create that really sort of a very mossy texture that kind of like echoes the sphagnum moss, but at the same time there's kind of this tension between it being sort of synthetic, and so there's some kind of discomfort in it, and it's yeah, it's kind of, it's got beauty, but it's also a bit wrong at the same time. And on the inside is a paper tube that I lino printed, and I created the lino print thinking about the patterns of the feathers of the grouse. So I'd done some initial drawings of the grouse when I started the project, and I didn't want to be super literal by having imagery of the actual birds, but I decided that I'd do some like very exaggerated feather patterns with the lino, and then printing them in a kind of blocky, almost landscapey print. So I tried out some different variations, but then I quite liked the visual effect of having it with the sort of gappy spaces where there's kind of nothing going on, and I think it's worked really effectively. And so Joanna actually suggested that I try to create a 3D model to go in this virtual exhibition, and I had no idea that I would actually be able to do that, but then apparently it's not too difficult because
it looks amazing. It's really similar to the
It does look great. My dad also helped to to clean them up a bit as well. So yes, thank you for that. And I had so this little one, and in real life they are also not as big as they are. So this is a little one that I initially just made as a maquette to test out, trying to make a sculpture with this orange net and the waste materials, and I really liked how it turned out. And it is actually just probably about, I don't know, it just sits in the palm of your hand. So it's very small, but it's very cute. And yeah, so, and I also with this one just stitched in some just old cut off bits of weave from previous weaving projects. Yeah.
So does anyone have any questions for Jodie? Anyone from the chat? Anyone from the group? James?
Do you have yeah, could you say some more about I'm so curious about the lino cut because I'm so impressed with it, and it just looks so
Thank you.
the seamlessness of it is really great, and it's good. And the ink, what kind of ink is that? It's just like a block printing ink or something?
It's just a block printing ink. I kind of had grand ideas that I would go out and try to make my own block printing ink using earth pigments, but because I had so many things that I was working on, and I kind of thought, oh, I'm just gonna end up trying. I mean, I think I already ended up trying to do too many things maybe, but I don't know. I'm really happy with the results of everything that I got. But yeah, so I used block printing ink, and I think I showed you some earlier just kind of very simple prints that I got from the lino cut. But yeah, I think this will probably be the first time that you've seen the finished results that I did with it. And I feel like I fluked it with getting the print, so it kind of, I don't know, it feels like it repeats really nicely, but I hadn't really planned it. I kind of just went for it and thought I'll just see what happens. So yeah, I'm kind of chuffed with that. But I think something for the future will be to have a go with making block printing ink from earth pigments, because I found a recipe that seemed quite straightforward online, just using rice flour, in fact, so you can kind of just do it with kitchen stuff. But I think it will involve a lot of muddling and all of that business and getting the right quantities. Yeah, with the weaving, so the one on the right hand side, I think Scorched Scarred. For this, I was thinking about the look of the landscapes of the heather moors after the burning has happened. So they have a really kind of patchworky appearance to them. So I wanted to echo that with the weave. And I just decided that I was going to work with yarns that I'd dyed using plant-based dyes previously, to use what I had. I also had a go at printing an iron modifier on the top using the lino cut, and it's a lot more subtle than with the paper prints. So that is something I think that I could definitely develop a lot more in the future, and I think definitely needs a lot more experimentation to refine it. But I was kind of like interested in getting the sort of like the dark sort of black shades of the burnt land in there as well. And this one, carbon captors, quite straightforward, but in the bottom there I I wove in, it's the strapping, the plastic strapping that you get around parcels, like quite heavy duty stuff. It's always really annoying and kind of, but but I decided that I was gonna just shred it into really sort of thin strips, or as thin as I could get. So it ended up getting these sort of like different thickness of strips of the strapping, and then I wove it in this pattern, which I kind of ended up getting a slight wave. I don't know whether you can see very well, but it's like, I guess it almost feels like a trick of the eye because of the way the pattern is. You can kind of see this sort of like wiggliness, and I thought it was kind of like, it was quite nice. I was thinking, well, with the name Carbon Captors, I was thinking of the peatland sequestering the carbon, trapping it and locking it in the land, and thinking of the strapping as the carbon kind of like being trapped in. And it's got these little, its tentacles reaching out from the edges. And at the top of the weave as well, I had some yarn that was kind of dip dyed, so it's kind of darker in some parts and lighter in other parts, and it is difficult to see in this photograph. Actually, I feel like you have to actually see it close up in the flesh, but it does this really lovely, quite watery sort of pattern texture. You can kind of vaguely see it if you're looking at the photo. Yeah, thank you. I think, I don't know, unless anyone else has any more questions, I think I'm ready to pass on the baton.
Does anyone in the chat has a question for Jodie? Okay. No, I will move on. If you do have any questions, just leave it in the chat and then we can address it at the end. Let's go here to Bronwen.
I asked for a nice little intimate corner, which you provided for me. So yeah, my pieces are quite small. Hopefully have a kind of intensity to them. So just to give you some background, my name's Bronwen Gwillim, and I live on the south coast of Pembrokeshire, in Wales, and I live on the end of a peninsula. And so where I am is really central, really, to my work. So on the end of this peninsula, I look out over a bay, and the other side of this small bay is a giant oil refinery. Apart from the oil refinery, it's this incredible natural environment, really rich in wading birds and all sorts of seaweed. There's incredible marine life here, but all the time there's this oil refinery there too. So this is one side of this peninsula. That the other side of the peninsula, which is only half a mile away because we're right at the tip, is the wild Atlantic Ocean. So one side is very quiet and muddy, the side with the oil refinery. The other side gets huge storms and big waves, and it brings in huge amounts of plastic onto the beach. So plastic is really the main focus of my work. But I'm always very aware that the plastic is offset. When I go to the beach, I'm aware that I kind of have this uncomfortable feeling of delight when I see very bright colours set against the very muted colours of the pebbles and the sand. So I'm particularly interested in how they work together, really, both in terms of colour, which is my passion, and one of the reasons why I'm very attracted to working with waste plastic is it's kind of found colour. It's there already. I don't have to buy paint. I can use what's already around. So I'm interested in how these two things fit together, how plastic reacts in the environment when it's in the ocean, how marine life reacts with it, and how I suppose that's a bit of a kind of metaphor for the times we're living in at the moment, where James talked about it really, all the things that we need to be happy. Which ones do we really need to be happy? What's the good things we want to take about plastic? And plastic is incredible material. I'm kind of in love with it and also scared of it. These pieces literally weave together natural things and plastic, and they are nearly all found or foraged. So this piece is red earth paint that I've made, but it's combined with, in the middle of this piece is that bright turquoise fishing twine. A lot of the waste plastic that I find on the beach comes from the fishing industry, not just from the Welsh fishing industry, but from Spain and France. And you see the names of the places on the side of these bits of plastic crate that have floated across the oceans to here. And I'm sure vice versa. Stuff from here is also going all over the world. So it's that kind of juxtaposition of the natural with the unnatural and how they work or don't work together. So here, this is a bit inspired by Jodie, to be honest. I'm really impressed by people who have patience and technique, and I don't really have either. So during the course of this residency, I tried so many different things. As other people on the residency will know, every week I would kind of turn up with something else that I'd been playing with. So in the end, so these were bits of fishing twine, and they're all in little short pieces. So I kind of very loosely wove them together over a print that I took from the surface of the water. So it's a bit like marbling, but I actually put ink onto the water surface. It was completely natural, and I used a natural surfactant as well. So this is like suminagashi on tissue paper, which is wrapped around found cardboard, and then the fishing twine and found plastic is kind of layered in there. They're quite small, and there's a series of 3. So the imagery in this one, I was very interested to read about how plastic has been in the ocean now for so long that marine organisms are adapting to it and finding that they not only can eat it, some bacteria is living off the surface of the plastic and actually consuming it, but also creating an environment which is almost like a hybrid place. They call them eco-coronas, which is this kind of layer on the surface of the plastic where there's a real kind of symbiosis between this plastic surface. What is plastic and what is actually living becomes much more blurred. So I got very interested in looking at these kinds of, the idea of this kind of skin and the kind of shapes of diatoms. These are the small, tiny bits of plankton, incredible shapes and patterns that found in marine life. So this is a kind of mix up of all of those things. Other images, so again, cages and nets are very much very present. On the beach, you see netting from the fishing industry, but you also see lobster pots. This idea of things being trapped is very present, really. So there's another thing that I kind of want to do is teach people about plastic. I think we just say plastic, but plastic is literally thousands of different types of materials. And so I teach people as much as I can about identifying the different types of plastic, what is recyclable, what isn't recyclable, its history, and giving names to these things I think are really important. I think plastic has become this really invisible material, It just is there, and we put it in the bin hardly with a thought, I think. So I kind of think naming it, the type of plastic, is really important. We've got to start making quite serious decisions about the bits we want to keep and the bits we don't want to keep in terms of our material development of plastic. So yeah, there's so colour, just kind of, yeah, colour is a crucial thing. These kind of acid, very fluorescent, quite kind of aggressive pinks and yellows and turquoises set against colour that I've collected from the cliffs on the beach. So there's this, where I live, there's a very interesting geological fault line, which means you get this really exciting range of ochres and reds. And so making my own paint, collecting the plastic, the colour is found colour. So yeah, I think that's probably kind of it, really. So yeah, there are ongoing series. And what's been useful for me in the residency is just trying to focus in and having the sounding board and the discipline of trying to present your ideas when you're thinking about 100 different things. I think the other problem with being very led by materials, which is what I am, I always start with the material rather than the idea, is that they can take you down all sorts of dead ends and all sorts of routes. So actually having this structure of this residency was really helpful for me in kind of weeding out those ones which were fun and great to explore, but really do they have enough to really develop an ongoing series of work that has some kind of coherence to it? So yeah, that's it really, I suppose. I'm interested in hybridity, this kind of thing between the natural and the unnatural, and how we navigate these times where we are now.
Well, do you want to talk a bit about the concept that is one of the main topics or the main correlation between your practice?
I think I think I'm very interested in Welsh culture. It's my family background, and being here in Wales. There's lots of very lovely things about the Welsh language. One of them is that there's no clear word for to own something. What you say is something is with me rather than it belongs to me, which is really lovely. So I wanted to share that. But the other one that I really like is called Milta Sgwar, and it means your square mile. And it's this idea that you know a very small patch of land, your home, and you know it intimately. You know every plant, or almost every plant. You know everything that lives there. You know about how the weather affects, or how the sun or the wind or the rain may affect the land and what grows there. You know the people really, really well. And that's very much, I suppose, the philosophy for me here is that the materials I use come from within a mile of where I live. I'm very deeply involved in the village is about a mile long with the two coasts either end of the village, and I'm very connected to the village and very actively trying to develop kind of community cohesion within this community. So Milta Sgwar, is very important. And for generations, it's been something in Welsh communities. When I was younger, I would have probably sneered at the idea that you never left your home, you never left your village. I would have thought how small-minded, how narrow-minded, that was the way that we wouldn't be building connection, that we wouldn't be building understanding across the globe. But actually, given the climate crisis and the nature crisis, I have huge respect for that now. The idea that you just know something really, really well and you really respect it. And I think that's one of the problems, is we know so little about nature now where we live, that it's hard to know what it is that we're even losing.
Thank you, Bronwen. Does anyone have questions for Bronwen? Anyone from the chat? Jane, Jodie, Charlotte, any questions?
Mike, I have a question about paint making. I mean, it's a little technical, but I find it so fascinating and interesting that you make the paint from the recycled plastic in part and other things, earth pigments and stuff too. But can you talk a little bit about that and like the color swatches? Because we don't see the swatches here, but there was a part of the project that was quite fun that had to do with names and other things.
Yeah, so I did a whole thing about, so yeah, color and paint making was really central to the project. And actually all those paint swatches are currently being exhibited in a real gallery at the moment. I didn't include them in here because they were so small. It was quite hard, I think, to see how they would have worked in this context. But yeah, so for quite a lot of the project, I was making paint. I was dissolving expanded polystyrene using acetone, and then mixing in different colours into that. So that was making paint from waste plastic, which is quite easy to do. It's quite interesting how that works. There's other kinds of polystyrene, apart from expanded polystyrene, so high impact polystyrene. I had coloured material, so that was making different coloured paints too. So that was interesting. I was also grinding up bits of old paint, so paint that had fallen off, that I'd collected off the beach, that was on the side of bits of wood that were part of old boats, grinding up old paint and then remixing that with binders, and then making paint, obviously I've talked about making paint from earth and using different binders there. So the different binders I use, I grow beans and I make a soya milk from the beans, and that is a really good binder for using on fabrics. So some of the paintings that are on the left of the screen here, that they are all earth pigments made with soya protein milk, and then painted onto the fabric, and that works really well. The ones that are painted onto cardboard, which are on the right, or with paper, I use different binders for that, either starch. So you can get, I got a load of, the packaging material that you get in a big box. Sometimes it's expanded polystyrene, those horrible big kind of beads, those big lumpy things.
Peanuts?
But sometimes it's starch, and so I was using those, melting those starch ones to make the paint with the ground up earth pigment, which works really well. Like you were using, like Jodie said about using rice starch. Starch is a great thing. What else do I use? Seaweed. I've started making my own gesso using ground up chalk mixed with carrageen, which is a seaweed that we have a lot here. So you boil it up and that makes this kind of glutinous mass. And then if you mix that with potassium chloride, which is a naturally occurring salt, then that makes a fantastic glue. So when you mix that with the lime or chalk, you make a really good gesso. So that's another thing that I've been doing. And again, then seeing how that works, setting this natural material next to synthetic plastics. So yeah, there's lots of kind of technical. The other thing we did was we made lots of silly names up to describe these paint colours. So yeah, they are being displayed, and people did have a laugh at some of the names because you helped me with some of those names. So I'm sorry not to share them here, but they are being appreciated somewhere else.
It's really great to hear about the process of all of your the different materials that you create, and I was just wondering, sort of, it must be reasonably / extremely time consuming. So do you have kind of, I don't know, it's some sort of system where you'll just make a big batch of something, like your your mediums, your pastes, or you'll just do it kind of as and when?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do it, definitely do it as and when. I do, yeah, I just do enough for what I'm doing, to be honest. Or sometimes if I'm doing a large piece of cloth, then yes, I'll do a larger amount. But the soya protein, it needs to be used really quickly. If you yes, it needs to be fresh, because it needs to bond to the fabric when it's still very fresh. So that, yeah, you just make up enough to use on that day. And then the other things, yeah, they start to set, so they will lose their potency. If it's like anything natural, really. It needs to set where you're putting it, where you want it to be, rather than in a container. You can put, I do put kind of honey and tea tree oil and things like that in to make sure that they don't go rotten. But even so,
I didn't realize that. I guess, is it the sugar in the honey that kind of keeps things preserved? Or
I don't know.
I've not heard of that one before.
It's always a traditional one. So people who make their own watercolor paints, they'll mix it with gum arabic and a hint and a bit of honey. That's just always been the traditional way of doing it. Because honey's got this incredible material properties. It's an antibacterial. They use it on wounds. So it's antibacterial, which is why it's a preservative.
And it needs to be Manuka honey, or it can be any honey, Rowan?
Any honey. And it's also why, it doesn't grow mold on it. Honey, jam and all those things mold on it. Honey doesn't grow mold.
I don't know what that funny noise is, but I do have a question, Bronwen. So you live in quite a small place. I'm just curious as how your square mile, of course, includes people. How do they view your particular brand of artistry or interact with it?
They think that we're very odd. They think that we're very odd, but so yeah, it's interesting. This, during the course of the residency, Joanna introduced us to lots of different artists who all worked in very different ways. And for me, I found it much better to separate out my work community, with the community, and my work as an artist. They used to be much more closely linked. But now I was finding the fact that I was an artist actually put people off. They would make judgments about me if I said, "Oh, I'm an artist." So now they know me. Like, what's all that noise? So now they're very much they know me as Bronwen, as somebody who lives in the village, who does this and who does that, who organises seed swaps and collects local history pictures and organises workshops for kids. And so they know me on that level. And they also, I've made use of the film made with the local community about the area. I think you Charlotte, you liked the old and so they relate to me on that level, but my work is a bit more private. So no, I don't show my work in the village. The other complication is that a lot of the people who live in the village work for the oil refinery. So there's, it's complex. It's really complex. We're like a little microcosm here of all the complexities going on and all the issues about climate justice and all the people who are going to lose their jobs. We're in this interesting transition period, and nothing is clear and nothing is simple.
No more questions? Jodie, do you want to answer yours before we go to Charlotte? Or do you want to answer it at the end?
Yeah, I can answer it now. Yeah, thank you for your question, Tessa. Yeah, I think that all work benefits from being able to see it in sort of physical flesh. I think with textiles, it's I love to see it kind of up close and personal, and a lot of the times I want to touch things even if I'm not allowed to touch them. Sometimes that can be frustrating about being in a physical gallery in a textile show. I think showing things online, it has its benefits in terms of being able to reach people that perhaps might not have had the opportunity to come and see it in a gallery. But I think if you are planning on sort of displaying your work online, then it's definitely kind of beneficial to actually just take some really good photos of it, for anybody who's kind of considering that in any sort of, in any medium of work. Being able to see it clearly. I think with this, especially with the weave, it was nice to be able to take different detail shots and actually take photographs of it, kind of not just hanging, but actually kind of like folded and gathered, so you could get a sense of the drape of the textile. And then I think with the sculptures, creating the 3D model was just a really fun thing to do. And they do change how they look, but I find it quite interesting to see kind of like what technology does with something that's kind of a bit I guess it's kind of is not very definite in the first place, and I quite like how really, I don't know, especially with the big sculpture, I really got a sense of kind of like coral growing on the sort of like central pillar in the middle, so I just think that was quite interesting. But yeah, I think there are positives and negatives to showing textile work in a virtual exhibition. But I think I don't think it's a question of it enhancing the work, but more of a kind of like you do get to share it sort of a bit more widely. I don't know. Also, what do everyone else think about like your works? How do you feel about kind of the difference between sharing things online and sharing things in a gallery space?
I was very interested to see what it would be like. I suppose the space, these kind of spaces, it almost looks like the world Charlotte. You'll find out about Charlotte's project, but the super rich are part of the problem in many of our eyes in terms of the climate crisis, and yet this space looks like it belongs to that world. So there was a bit of me that felt really uncomfortable about having my work, and I was saying, I just want a little kind of intimate space. But I think that's what's good about that is what you can take from, you don't have to have a swanky big gallery with lots of glass, which is killing the planet. You can do things online which do that. I suppose the other thing about it is the characters. Again, James mentioned it, this idea that galleries are meeting places. You can have a great conversation with a stranger whilst looking at a piece, and so that kind of human connection is missing too. But it's a great experience. I definitely do it again. I don't know, what does everyone else think?
But I think perhaps even maybe there's some kind of like I don't know if this is true, but perhaps it's kind of more, well, yeah, it's more accessible to some people, or I don't know whether a gallery would be maybe feel like an intimidating space for some people to go into, and I don't know whether it being in an online format kind of like removes that element. I don't know. Maybe not, but it's an interesting question.
I find, because I have a 10-year-old son, that it's interesting that it is a gaming sort of platform that we're in here essentially. So it's something that it strikes me as having potential for being interesting to a younger generation in a way that maybe going to an old-fashioned sort of standard type of museum might not be, as a way of viewing art. So, like, I don't think there's any excuse or any replacement. There's no comparison really to seeing artwork. The authenticity of it and everything in the flesh is so different, and a lot of our work looks great when reproduced, graphically for a phone or something, but when you see it in person, it's very, very different. It's a different experience. But since a lot of people do sort of consume stuff through their phones and whatnot, I don't know, it's a different way of experiencing it because it slows it down. You have to kind of navigate it through it and click on the image and look at it. And you kind of go and you click it on the next one. It actually, in a way, kind of does slow the process down a little bit and make it more akin to viewing art in a gallery, which is nice. You have to just kind of make the effort to go and do it. But you do sort of have a bit of a sanctuary-like feeling in the space, despite the fact that it's online. I think that it does. I don't know. Slowing down is an important part of appreciating art. So, yeah.
And if you can't get that little figure to move where you want them to go, it's even more, challenging or slow.
I like the fact that we're looking at this character and she's just dying to go through that door. She's just going from one foot to the other. Like, when am I going to be allowed to go through that door? And it says, what does it say? Abandon hope, all ye who enter herein.
Maybe she can't get through the door because it took me quite a long time to figure out.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to end this part of the conversation so I can move to Charlotte's. And I think in terms of the visual space, is one of the great aspects of it is that a lot of people from around the world can see it. Something that if you had a physical space, only people from that city could go. And I think that's a great aspect, especially for work who wants to raise awareness about climate issues or social issues or political issues, which is for me the greatest aspect. And, connecting with people from all around the world, which is good with the chat and talking with all guys. Of course, not the same that seeing the work. And I think it's always good to be in a physical space and look at the work. Not a lot of work you can touch. And of course, for me, it would have done the space, doing the curatorial aspect of it, and creating a space that is connected with the work that you guys did in the residency. For me, it's also a good aspect of it. So, can I go through Charlotte's maze, or does anyone have anything to say? So you just go through the door, and then you have a maze. Charlotte, do you want to just talk a bit about at the end, or can I just move as you speak?
What do you think? What do you think's best? Shall I say a few words to start off?
Just tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about the work that you did, and I just go through it.
So, Joanna had this simple but brilliant idea of bringing together different eco artists from completely different disciplines, and I realized that I've never actually interacted that closely with visual artists. So for me, it was incredibly interesting, very different ways in which they use their art, because of course I have a specific way of using my art and thinking about it in a different way. But from James is thinking about how to connect the divide, but also the reasons for that divide in a way that I never thought of, like all of these different things that we do today via our phones, which used to be social, and then that lack of sociality is part of the reason why we're so divided. Of course, Jodie's passionate love for the land, and also for the way that she looks at her knowledge of why, either whether it's well-intentioned ignorance that like burning the heather to make it grow back better, or intentional exploitation. I mean, again, I'm thinking about these things and using it in her art, and Bronwen salvaging what the sea spews up. Even that sort of image is lovely, but salvaging it and then creating beautiful art with that. So for me, it was really interesting, and of course a little bit challenging to think about how to be in an exhibition when I'm a writer, because that wouldn't be my normal sort of medium. And I didn't actually know that I was supposed to speak today, so I didn't prepare. I usually, when I know I have to speak, I practice and practice and practice, and I didn't know that we was. I sort of pictured people wandering around the gallery, and the artist kind of stands by their bits, and if anybody asks a question, then that's. So I hope people do have questions. I will talk a little bit about. We seem to have gone through the maze fairly quickly. So the maze idea was actually Joanna's idea. The maze. My idea was to have questions with footprints going in different questions. So if we go to the beginning of the maze and just one or any part of the maze and just click on one of the questions, they're very simple questions, and if you answer yes or can we stop and click on one of them, just so that they can see. I guess they can see anyway. So it's it's basically sort of questioning you, and everybody here probably knows what the right answer is. And then you go footprints that way and footprints that way. So while other people are sort of pointing out the issues that society's having, being divided and what's dividing us, I'm really thinking, everything's an evolution. As artists, we're all the time evolving. So this is a phase, and maybe next phase will be completely different. But in this phase, I'm kind of getting more and more sort of feeling that it's time to pull out the big guns. Like, we don't have a lot of time left, and what does the big guns mean? So those Trump did get in, James, into your country, and that is part of the polarization. But also the populists are doing very, very well. Why are they doing so well? Can we borrow a page from their notebook? And it's like they're actually making people full of rage. They're making them angry, right? And so people feel angry, and they want a change, and that's part of the reason why we're voting for why people are voting for such odd choices. I mean, it's a desire for change. It's a way of it's something within their power that they can do. So when I'm thinking about these two very polarized sides, what is it that unites us? And obviously the love for our family, and Bronwen's idea of the square mile. We do. I mean, many of us do love our land. And rage, what unites us is there's a greater and greater discrepancy between the poor and the rich. And that is, as it happens, the top 1% of society creates the same amount of pollution as the bottom 66%. I mean, that's almost mind-boggling. All of it, so much of it unnecessary, so much of it is not adding anything to our happiness. So if there's that rage already existing, how can I kind of tie it into my passion, which is the climate? Because the fact is that it kind of goes together, because they are also trashing the earth. So the idea of the moral murderer is born, and the moral murderer is an heiress. She herself is very, very rich, and she comes from a very entitled family. And she starts to get, she goes to a school, and she starts to get really interested in the environment anyway. But a sexual assault sort of makes her recognize the sort of entitlement, because she was quite young when she had 12, 13, and it's the same thing. I want something, I'm going to take it, and screw the consequences. This is what we're doing to the earth too. And so she grows up to be the moral murderer. She is an escort, and she has sex with billionaires in the oil industry, so specifically oil barons, because you don't want to necessarily carpet. It's a bit like no one group is all bad. That's not a good way to think. So there are lots of good, probably some good billionaires. So she goes after oil barons, has sex with them, and then kills them. So this is my first thriller, and also I'm very new at screenplays. There's a screenplay, so it was exciting to write. It's just fun to write about violence and sex. Yes, I'd be very interested in if people think this is totally crazy, because it's just obviously the first of this new train of thought, this new direction I'm going in. But it is sort of, for me, it feels like, okay, I want to sort of make people, yes, I want to make them feel angry, but to tie in that anger, in that the idea that it's gross, the way that the way that some of us live, and the way that many of us live. Like I indulge. I'm too bloody self-indulgent, and we're living beyond. We have too big footprints in our world, and how do you you're not going to ever get anybody if if I say to, people don't want to change necessarily, but if there's already that anger existing against these rich people, and you tie that into the sort of grotesqueness of their lives, like the father of this young girl, she keeps on saying, like, why are we eating, these huge slabs of steak when we know, or why are we doing this, why are we doing that? And he says to her, you don't need to worry, we have a bunker, we'll be safe. They really think of themselves in a completely different, almost like a category from the rest of humanity, because they're so privileged. And yes, I feel that the anger is just there to ignite. And when it does ignite, if I can tie it in somehow to the climate, then maybe that might be helpful. But I leave it up to you to ask, if you don't agree with me, to disagree and have a little argument online. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, just let people know this is a video. You can click on it. For some sorry, not this side. Two computers, but you can see here, and this is a creative reading of 2 scenes of Charlotte's screenplay. You can see it later. And yes, you can, if you have any questions or any thoughts, you can add it to the chat. And you guys, you have anything to comment? We had a lot of very interesting conversation during our group meetings about these topics. So if you guys want to share anything, please do.
Do you feel like, looking back, did you have any sort of expectations for the residency at the beginning? Kind of, not really. I guess working alongside other visual artists, did you have any kind of visions of how it might pan out? Has it differed to your initial thoughts at all, or do you feel like it's you had an idea and it's kind of gone in that direction?
I guess a bit like this exhibition, I didn't really know what to expect. I've not done a residency like this before, or an exhibition like this before. So the different way that your minds work. I'm talking about the three of you. That was really interesting to me because we are eco artists and we're all working within our little realm, like I kind of said at the beginning, our little realm of life, slice of land where we live, and we are responding to what's around us. So James is in a very polarized place, so he's very, Bronwen is, so he's very aware of that polarization and why he's thinking about that. And Bronwen's living in a special physical place, so she's really connected to her square mile idea. I just, and with salvaging what she can find within that. So her whole art is based on that, right? And where did your, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Like, where did your particular connection to the land come from?
Was that me? You said.
Well, I was asking. I was sort of like, Jodie. But I know your connection to the land because it's your land there. But it was sorry. It was Jodie. Like your connection to the particular exploitation of all the things that are not so great that we could criticize and focus on. You're focusing on the abuse of land, right? Why?
Yeah. My focus on the abuse of land. So I guess because I'm from England, even though I'm not living there at the moment, and there's a whole load of privately owned this and that and land, and the waterways are horrendously polluted. If you go for a swim in the rivers, then you're swimming where raw sewage is dumped, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, the water companies, they're kind of they're privately owned companies abroad, and also they're kind of, a lot of them are in huge amounts of debt, because they keep getting fined from all of this sort of dumping into the rivers. Yeah, I listen to I mean, I listen to a lot of kind of podcasts and sort of left-wing media. I listened to an interview with an author and activist called Guy Shrubsole, who was talking about his book, The Lie of the Land. And the lie of the land is that there's this wealthy elite who own the countryside in the UK, and they are custodians, and it's their role to protect the land, because the rest of us are not capable of doing so. But really behind the scenes, they're taking part in all of these kind of really nasty, environmentally unfriendly practices, just to continue making money. So that was kind of like really where I was channeling this project. And then just like sort of personally, I mean, I've spent a huge amount of time kind of working with the land. I work currently in a community garden, in a local community garden, and in Leeds, where I was living in the UK, I was working in a community permaculture garden there, and also an urban organic farm as well. So I really I get a lot from working with the land, and also the community that comes with it as well, like working with other people, growing plants, growing vegetables. I use a lot of plant-based dyes in my work, and I grow my own color at home. So I just have these sort of different elements that feed into my work, and kind of really feel the importance of the land sort of like in my life. It does just wonders for my mental health, and I love swimming outdoors. It's one of my favorite things to do, even when it's really cold. I went today, and it was probably, I don't know, I have no idea what the temperature of the lake is at the moment. It was around 7 degrees sort of in winter. It must be warming up now, but it still feels really cold. But yeah,
I wanted to ask Charlotte about the inspiration behind her characters. Do you know people like those characters in your screenplay?
Well, all my sisters are on this call. I happen to know. Hello, sisters. My son and my Ellie, and so I can't. Oftentimes there might be, but you're not allowed to say. I've learned that from past books. No, I'm just joking. Well, actually, one of the inspirations was just reading Charles Dickens and recognizing, wow, he's really creating these sort of incredibly awful characters like Uriah Heep or Charles Dickens, these awful characters, and you just, you loathe them, and that's what makes his writing, you gripping. You want to read, you want this guy to be punished, right? So if you're able, so that was like the Jen character, the mother of the moral murderer. Part of her growing up was, with a stepmother. It's not her mother; it's a stepmother, and I wanted to make her a deliciously loathsome character that we just, and not immediately obvious, sort of growing until it becomes absolutely clear that she's a horrific human being, absolutely focused on herself and on money, and on acquiring more and more crap. It was actually just really, wow, it's because you evolve. So in the beginning, almost all your characters, I mean, interestingly, are kind of nice, and always your heroes are nice, and people are not all nice, so they're not one-dimensional, and you've got to make really complex characters, so that reading and recognizing, wow, the really great writers that I love, they have these they're horrible, and she was just so fun to write. They're so fun to write. I think behind every murderer, there's probably a fat mum. If I'm not sorry.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Sorry,
James.
sorry.
I'm just answering here 2 questions from Miranda in Teza about the maze. So, Charlotte, you want to talk a bit about the questions, because the maze is more of a symbolic representation of your work, meaning there are questions that are made for the viewers to think a bit about their relations with the climate and the land and their footprints. And then it ends up in Charlotte's work. So, Charlotte, do you want to talk a bit about the questions and why these questions in particular?
Well, I think that I was in an exhibition and I'm a writer, so I didn't quite know how to visually depict my work. And so the idea of having initially it was supposed to be a quiz, and it was going to be more, more like a quiz where you get them right or wrong, and then at the end, the person giving you either a drink of champers or a drink of cyanide, which is the method that the Moral Murderer uses, according to what you answered. There's three areas. I teach a lot of climate education, and there's three areas. There's transport, and there's food, and there's stuff that we buy. And so they're very simplistic questions, really. And it was kind of just to create a visual, fun thing to get to the video. But yeah, those are the three. I think there are 3 or 4 questions based on those 3 areas where we. So do you fly more than once a year, or do you drive an SUV? Go this way or go that way. Really in a way. There's nothing you can't quite avoid. Like I'm having a problem trying to avoid sanctimony through this thing because it just is. But it feels again that sort of feeling that wow, we're running out of time, and I want to be. I don't care anymore. I don't care whether I'm being sensitive or whether I'm being nice or whether I'm hurting this person's feelings. And I just feel that we need to know. We need to say, look, if you're driving an SUV, what's wrong with you? Like really, what's wrong with you? We have balloons. One of my climate ed courses has balloons that go up so that you actually visually see the amount of carbon. SUV compared to a normal size car, and it's just like it's so much more. It's obscene. So either people don't know or they don't care, and if they don't care, then I feel that in the past things have changed, like smoking in Canada, for example. It was sexy billboards with people smoking and then absolutely vilifying smokers, and that was a fairly quick change, actually. So we can. It does matter. People really care what society thinks of them. So that if we can start to shift and say, actually, this behaviour is socially unacceptable. It feels to me that, and so those are very simplistic questions, but they're really kind of honing in on the 3 areas that I feel people need to be aware of and need to modify their behaviour around. Who am I? Holier than thou, but yeah, that's where it came from.
And to answer Susie's question, it was a fascinating contribution from everyone. Just wondering how long have been working together. So this is a 6-week residency. So they have been working together for 6 weeks. I know it seems long because they work kind of weeks together, but it's only 6 weeks. Just to answer Susie. And Charlotte, about your work, how can we see it? Do you have any plans for it?
The Moral Murderer?
Yes, the screenplay.
Oh, well,
because we know the end. We know the end. We have the privilege of knowing the end, the group, but the rest doesn't. And I'm sure you don't want to spoil that. But do you have any plans for it?
Well, this is a new. I'm not very good at knowing how things work. This is very new. Screenplays is completely new for me. It took me 10 years to get my first book published, just because I'm not good at it. So I don't know. It's a new and exciting journey, but probably you can see it on a screen in 50 years. No, I don't know. Hopefully, we all hope. We don't know what's going to happen though.
Okay, thank you.
James, did you want to go back to yours?
There's a whole genre, isn't there, of interactive storytelling where you have choices and you can shape the story.
Yes.
And I mean, that's maybe, I mean, I really like the idea that we've all been affected by each other's work. And I don't know, I did worry sometimes that you were frustrated that we were all very visually orientated, and, you came from a very different discipline, and maybe you'd have liked to have had another writer in the group who would have spoken the same language as you. But I think maybe that the interactivity of having this experience, is there any way that you can take that forward, given that technology gives us those choices to shape the narrative depending on our choices? Can you see any way that it could be developed other than being a TV program? It could be an online an online story where people make choices as they go along, because there's so many people doing that.
Yeah, you've just given me a new idea, Bronwen. That's one of the perfect ways in which we interact together in a positive way. You guys are visual. And because this is my first screenplay, your feedback was valuable to me in that you're a visual artist. So I felt that your ability to visualize what I'm writing, that's where I run into slight obstacles or the learning curve. Because, of course, when you're writing a novel, you don't visualize. So, the fact that I was working with visual artists, I felt that was a direct benefit for me. I don't know if if I was a direct benefit for you. Yes, it was helpful.
I think you were a good benefit to us, because I think often people just make assumptions that we all know what each other means. And so you would ask the question, which made us go, oh, okay, what do I really mean here? So that was useful too.
I completely agree. That's actually what I was going to say, is just that I'm so glad that you were a part of it, Charlotte, and because it does add, it's a unique angle. I mean, just in our discussions, it's I mean, even having different visual artists different mediums that we're all working with, the other three of us, is fun because it's not exactly the same as what you're always doing. If we were all painters, for instance, it could be great in its own way, but it's different. It doesn't provide the same different sort of perspective. But having someone who you're working in a medium that is not static at all, and that you have so many different ways that you can develop these things and develop the plot, but develop the characters to add a certain element here or there, or to play the good person, the a foil or a antagonistic person, presence or whatever, and that's very fun. And so I find that I'm sort of jealous of that in a way, because it's hard to say things that you want to say in one frame. So whenever we would read bits of your story as you were presenting it to us, I immediately went to sequential art, partly because I'm trying to write this graphic novel. It's a sequential art or whatever, graphic novel. But it would be the perfect medium. So maybe there's a possible collaboration in the future, is like find someone you could do like little graphic versions of it, even as a way to pitch
idea.
it to people.
That's a great idea.
Just wanted to say, Charlotte, that I could tell that you were really enjoying the naughtiness of it, like the sex bits, basically. I was like, oh, ooh. But you were having real fun with it as well. So it's like this funny mixture of very dark and then quite playful as well.
And you want that. You want people to enjoy it. You've got to entertain as well as, that's always a balance, isn't it? Like, how do I talk about the climate in an entertaining way? Oh, well, let's write a thriller. I mean, that's part of the reason why I went in that direction as well. It's like, everybody likes a good thriller, and we have real life villains that are, everybody should be making those as the villains. Joanna, just sort of from what the other my fellow eco artists were saying, what gave you that idea? Because I'm not sure there are other residencies which actually bring together people from completely different disciplines.
The group can grow quite a lot, and the thing that I love with these residencies is you kind of morph a bit into each other, because it's 6 weeks that we have so much contact, so many discussions, that it's at the end you practice grows quite a lot, and you can see that the interactions would be beneficial. So when you bring people together from different disciplines, you grow in so many different ways. And as James was saying, it's if you were all painters, we kind of would be in the same playground, and because we are so different, you can bring different experiences to the shot in different perspectives.
It was funny though, because looking at the title and the theme, and seeing the fibres that James used in his work, and in Jodie's, and in mine, and then the moral fibres theme, incredibly tied all of us in, didn't it? That was really interesting, I think, because at some point I was thinking, I don't know how we're going to find a theme between us, and then somehow it did.
No, that was a good name. That was your name, Bronwen.
I can't remember where it came from, but yeah, it was. I think we talked about connections, and didn't we, and all sorts of things before finally finding something. But yeah, but your work, James, didn't have those layers of fibre on top of them the last time I saw them. So when I saw those and you put those on top, I was like, oh God, yes, moral fibre.
That was fun. That was fun. I mean, that is exactly right. It's like not the kind of thing that I would have necessarily done. I have glued paper down in front of a monotype for a project that was called The Future of Water, that was sort of commissioned by a nonprofit here in my town, called the School for Living Futures, where we sort of 3 different artists were commissioned to kind of, again, it's all about collaboration. All these things are so important as an element to all this this discussion. But it was about water specifically, where I had like clear bits where it didn't have the paper and other parts that were obscured by the paper ever so slightly. And then another one that's like the reverse of it, where you could, so it's sort of about like where our focus was, which I kind of had to, as my initial thought, as part of what I was going for with this one too, with focus. But it's because of our discussions and everything, that it morphed into the printing of different woven things or unnatural ones as an element. And especially there's one of your pieces, Bronwen, that has that sort of lovely piece of sort of plastic fabric or whatever sort of glued down to it, that looks like it could have been printed almost. And so it was kind of a fun concept. And so I decided to just go ahead and ink some of them, and it all ties it together nicely. So it's fun. I was just in terms of online residency, I was very curious at first, even just how that would be possible, because it's a little bit of an oxymoron. Oh, good. It stopped blowing outside. But it's interesting because it really does still have a lot of the community elements, even though we're not like actually together, because it was really 3 days a week. We do have this ability to bounce ideas off each other and really sort of get to know each other in a way that that does fulfill a lot of that, and the challenge that it presents to try to kind of produce something for a certain sort of tangible outcome, rather than just because you feel like it or whatever. And so it's sort of interesting. It's always surprising how you don't, you can't see how maybe at first how something like a residency could not actually have an in-person component, but it definitely it's still possible.
Yeah, and I feel like that really that it kind of like nurtured the ability for us to kind of do all of our work, which is all like quite different from different disciplines. Like I can't imagine participating in a residency where we would have, I mean, maybe it would be possible, but where we'd have printing equipment and weaving equipment, and we would have a writer and a found plastic, sort of beach plastic collage artist working. I mean, perhaps it is possible in the flesh. I would love to discover this place because it sounds like a dream. But yeah, I feel like it really enabled us all to connect, and yeah, and I just think I really echo what Joanna was saying about sort of like how all of the different disciplines really help one another to kind of like nurture and kind of grow in these different ways, and just kind of thinking about going forward and what we've learned from one another. I think it's been so special, and I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I would love to do something like this again. It's been really fun.
Sorry, there was just my niece shared Miranda's little story here. She's so sweet, and she said, "Can you share a bit more about the different destinations in the maze where you end up? Depending, you end up in the same place. It seems like not, but because they go in opposite directions, but you actually always end up in the video. Sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, I do thank everyone for being here and bearing with us as we explain the work and what the artist did. I really hope you enjoyed the space. I really enjoyed doing the space and putting all the work together. Thank you, Miranda. And I hope you guys like the residency and like to connect. And I think that's one of the amazing aspects of the residency is connecting with other people, people that you probably wouldn't be able to be in the same space at the same time, because we are all from different countries, America, and then we have Bronwen in Scotland, Jodie is in Wales, sorry. Jodie is in Switzerland, am I mistaken? Charlotte, and Charlotte's now in Berlin. So we are from all different places and we're all together, and which for me it's amazing. Thank you for being here and being the residency, and thank you guys from the live stream for asking so many questions and being present till the end.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
It's really good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's wonderful.